Hi, everyone. Welcome to, I believe, episode 5 of Tuesday Night Live. Today is titled Breathe. With everything happening in the world in this semester and just being college students or adjacent in my case, mental health is a big thing to talk about. So we have some amazing guests today to talk about that. So please welcome our guest. I'll let them introduce themselves. And because last time, people keep reminding me, I keep forgetting to introduce myself. I am Casey, the campus minister, and the least important person on the call. So let's move on. So whoever wants to introduce themselves first.
Go ahead.
My name's Skylar. I'm a junior at the University of Central Arkansas, and I'm a double major in computer science and cybersecurity.
I'm Bill Smith. I'm a clinical social worker, LCSW, and have been practicing as a psychiatric social worker for well over 30 years.
That's awesome. And you may see Elena jumping on back and forth. Again, this is live, so everyone has internet issues. So she'll join us when she can. So I figured we would do kind of a softball question. None of these are softball questions, but out of them, how have you dealt with overcoming loneliness during physical distancing? That seemed to be a very popular kind of question or discussion over the last couple of months.
So for me personally, it's honestly been things sort of like this. Anything where I can interact with like my old, or like my college friends that I haven't seen recently. So whether it's like a live stream or, like a CCM event or just to hang out where we're on like Zoom or something, those have always been really nice. Especially in lieu of being able to see each other in person. So.
Personally, I have a large family, so I have plenty of social contact. But at work, we're doing not allowing individuals to come into the office. So all of our practice work is done FaceTime, or we have a medical application that we use. It's called Go. And all of our appointments for our clinical staff are done over internet. So all of our patients are seen like this. So we're doing our therapy sessions, counseling sessions in this format. But people I've spoke with, a lot of individuals are struggling with, having that kind of that social isolation, and their personal lives have been kind of compacted, and some people don't feel very comfortable getting out into the environment, because of the COVID virus, and other people do. So I think there's a number of things people can do to. We're sitting out on our patio. We've probably used it more this year than ever before, and so just being outside, I think, even if you're sitting by yourself or FaceTiming someone being outside, I think there's a lot to that, and that's been a recommendation I've had with my patients. Get outside as much as you can, and the ones that do that seem to feel a little bit better.
I'm kind of the opposite. All of my family is out of state, so I live alone. And so this has been something that has had to be kind of an intentional thing. Because normally when I come home from either work or my hobbies or running errands, it's nice to have that like alone time. And now that work and friends and hobbies and everything is in one space, I've had to purposely create opportunities to like reach out. So whether that is finding new ways of playing board games with people, or doing trivia night with CCMers, or having 4-hour FaceTime sessions with my sister and just literally doing nothing together. That has really helped. I have been lucky that my job was, while drastically affected, was not altered due to this. So, my work schedule has been the same. So that's kind of helped a lot with having a structure, which has helped kind of keep the loneliness at bay. And I know for me, that really helps me with my mental health, which I think is a great segue, which I totally didn't plan on setting up. Where is it? Doo-doo-doo. What habits or practices have you found that help keep your mental health in check?
I really like this question because I've managed to adopt something here recently in the past couple months that I saw in a YouTube video that, Casey, you sort of hit at a little bit, but it's the YouTube video is by CGP Grey. I don't know if you've seen him, Casey, but the premise, and well, the video is called Spaceship You, and the premise is essentially in your sphere of social isolation, however big that is, you can sort of recreate what you had before, in terms of like separate areas for work and socialization and sleep and exercise in your own home, right? So I've kind of broken up my room, which is where I spend most of my time, into different parts. So like I've made a rule for myself that I can't do work from bed, or I have like a separate area where I'll do like push-ups and weights and whatnot. So just having like compartmentalized areas has really helped me kind of get into those mindsets, for one, because I don't want to like mix the like working space and head space with the relaxing playing video game space. So that's a big one for me. And then also I think for Catholics especially, keeping my prayer life in balance. So like when all this everything went down with the quarantine and whatnot, my prayer routine that I had was really disrupted, and getting back on that track and kind of having that system of like normalcy again for that was really helpful and grounding in a way.
Absolutely. That's one of the first things I did was I took my desk out of my bedroom. One, because I'm not going to stream with students from my bedroom. That's just creepy. But also to create that space, because I knew I would possibly be going a couple of days without leaving my apartment. And so having that designated space where like this corner of my living room is work and nothing work goes anywhere else in my apartment. And so that really helped at the beginning. Now I'm just so used to it. I'm like, what can I do to switch it up now? And I think you guys know how much I struggle with sleep. I struggle with insomnia and, trouble falling asleep. I have no problem staying asleep. It's falling asleep. And so having a regular schedule of waking up around the same time, going to sleep around the same time really helps. It's actually been a little easier, surprisingly now, rather than when school's in session, because campus ministry kind of can't have a normal schedule. And then, of course, finding, not only maintaining my prayer life, but finding new ways of engaging my faith to kind of reinvigorate it so it's not kind of the same thing. Because again, I don't really, for a while, none of us really left our house. And so I would find a new place to go to Mass. So I've gone to Mass in like Germany. I've gone to Mass in Australia. I've gone to Mass in DC at the Basilica, which is one of my favorite places to go. I've gone home to my parish back home in Richmond. And so I've gone from everywhere from like parishes of 10 people who are live streaming to some of the biggest churches. And so that's been able to kind of help keep the kind of excitement, where me sitting in front of my computer, it might be easy to be like, oh, yeah, I went to Mass, but it's not the same, where I'm excited to go to Mass because I'm finding new places every week. So those have been some of the things that have helped me.
I think that sounds great. I think the the task for anyone is to first kind of look at ourselves and ask ourselves what is it that I need, or what will help me. What might help me may not be of any assistance to anyone else,
Mm-hmm.
and try to find kind of new paths. Particularly in times like that. My tactic has been to just try to keep things normalized as much as I can, and and there's been some new things come in. The girls got me a smoker for Father's Day, and I got it early, and I've been smoking a lot of ribs and
Nice.
things like that, and I think they've turned out pretty well. But I love my smokers, so I get up real early in the morning and get all that stuff ready, and boy, I get a real nice reward at the end of it too. But it's a new. Never had a smoker really like that, and so I think part of this too is if you find, but that's me. I have to find something new to kind of keep me entertained and that I enjoy doing, and I think that's one of the benefits for anyone, to try to find something different, but very helpful. And for some people, it's can be as simple as, well, they've never gone for walks or really exercised, and they're starting to do that and find the benefit. I know several people. One person told me yesterday, I cut out sugar and sodas, and I'm eating right now. I'm starting to really feel good, because I'm changing my diet and eating more healthy. But they're actively participating in that, doing that. So for that person, that's a new thing, and I think this is a good time to start new new paths. Like I said, like as you mentioned, kind of looking at your prayer life, or you know, different reading, trying to stretch and expand yourself spiritually, intellectually. So there's a lot of different things. Sometimes, what's that language program that Rosetta Stone?
Yeah.
I mean, I saw where, and I may have misunderstood it or something, but I think if you buy Rosetta Stone, you can get free languages once you buy one or something, or maybe it's another brand. But I thought, well, this would be a great time to learn a language.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I picked up, I've tried my hand at painting, which some of the students have seen some of my questionably good artwork. I picked up, not picked up, I tried sculpture out of polymer clay. Not very good at that, but it was fun. Something new. I too have been cooking a lot more. So opposite of your friend who started eating healthy, I started doing so yeah. So definitely like finding just new stuff that you don't normally get a chance to do. Last week we talked about building like a Catholic library, because a lot of students have been asking questions about like, hey, I have all this time, I want to read. What should I read, or like what books influenced this student or that student. So definitely reading has helped a lot of people, I think, during this time. So
That's the neighbors walking their dog behind us, and I think
it's all good.
They're puppies getting into it or something. I don't know.
Let's see. So I actually don't have this question written down, but we kind of discussed it while we were doing all of our mic checks and everything. I know for a long time I'm a generation older than Skylar, but I know when I was growing up, particularly in my teen years, there was a little bit of a stigma about sharing about mental health struggles, even if you're just like kind of having a down couple of days, not even fully, wrestling with something long term. Like you just didn't talk about it, especially if you were from a faith community. Because I know when I would share about some of my mental health struggles, it was always, well, you're not praying enough, or you don't believe enough, or you just need to be happy. It was one of those things that, joy is a sign of I grew up Protestant, just to preface that in case you weren't aware. Joy and happiness and always being on was a sign of like being a good follower of Christ. And so when those seasons of when like I couldn't do it because of my mental health, or some of my friends who struggled with eating disorders or anxiety, was something we never talked about. As I got to college and into the professional world, the stigma started to change. But I know there's still stigma for certain genders or certain ethnicities about sharing that. And so I thought I'd toss it out of like, what kind of stigmas you guys have seen around kind of mental health, and like if there's anything that you think the church could kind of do to help offset that, whether institutional or person to person wise.
I think in my case, and we were talking a little bit about this earlier too, but just having more resources available and information about it, I think would go a long way in helping with the acceptance and just letting people know that their problems are valid, and that they shouldn't be ashamed to have like these issues, and just that it's okay to be working on them and stuff. So like when I was in high school, we had a high school counselor, but he was more like a college counselor than like an actual like a mental health counselor. And so while teachers could provide that role, I've found that I'm more comfortable going to like a counselor that's their dedicated job and that they receive specific training in, rather than just confiding in someone that it's my only option. So something like that I think helps a lot.
There's a lot more resources available now than when I began my training about 35, 36 years ago. And there was a huge stigma on anything mental health at that time. There's still a stigma, but I don't think it's as great as it was. But with the number of resources that are available, I always encourage people to access those resources. It's amazing how many different resources are out there, and how many avenues of assistance or help, and a person can almost find um, exactly what they need. For me, in my experience, um, the Catholic Church has been very supportive of any mental health needs or requirements or assistance for any of the parishioners or people that that might come and talk to a priest, that may be that they're not Catholic, but I'm going to go talk to a priest. I feel safe there, and I think most priests are very very astute and they're highly trained. I don't think the general public realizes the extent of their training and their dedication, but their training is um, it's unbelievable, and I think they're very astute and very willing to kind of guide people if they need some professional help. And I always encourage people, even just a little bit of need goes a long way. People don't have to be, you know, full blown psychotic or something like that to get help. I've worked with a number of people, and we've done 3 sessions. That's all they needed. They just need some. It's kind of like taking your car into a garage. It's not running real as well as you'd like for it to, and you kind of wait as they look at it. And well, Mr. Smith, I'm waiting for the $2,000. This is going to cost $2,000, and hey, we got that fixed. That'll be $70 or something. Wow, okay, it runs great. They need a little part or switch or something tune up. People are kind of like that too. Sometimes they just need a little bit of support, a little bit of some direction, and a lot of therapists, not all, but there's always, in any profession, no matter what, there's always a few, but a really good therapist is going to be able to pretty much ping dead center pretty quick and help that individual with that particular issue, rather than, well, let's fix this over here or that over there. It depends on the training and the type of training and when they were trained, who trained the counselor, the therapist, on kind of their technique and style. There's a lot of art to it as well, and their ongoing training. But most of the time, they're going to zero in on whatever the issue, or maybe 2 issues are, but primary issue. Take care of that, and there's a lot. Short-term treatment is that's been the mainstay for the last 25 years, and you got to move quick, help the individual as rapidly as you can. And I was always pleased, but it's kind of like, wow, that's kind of neat. I get a lot of my patients, not all, but a number of my patients are referred to me by my other patients that I've seen, and I've got a number of people. I saw someone, first of the year, and I said, gosh, how long's it been? 6 or 7 years? No, Bill, it was 15 years ago. Oh, okay. Wow, time passes quick, But it's kind of like once you have contact with someone, they need to come back. It's kind of like you're in the old days Rolodex. You're there, and they can. But that's kind of nice to have that. And because we go through different phases of life, and different things can happen, and none of us can predict any of that. I mean, who could have predicted this?
Yeah.
No way. I'm not trying to be a doomsday, but who knows what's coming next? Hopefully it'll be, wow, 2021 that's the best year ever. Everybody gets along, back to work, and I can buy hamburgers and steaks again, and on and on. I put some of those on my smoker, but we just don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know what the turn of events are going to be.
Yeah, and I definitely want to echo what you talked about. Of it doesn't have your life doesn't have to be like burning down around you for you to go seek out help. We don't, most people, there are always some who just don't go to doctors, period. But normal people, if, they have a cough that, lingers a little bit, or, they have a stomach bug for a little bit, they'll go to the doctor. Or, you have a primary care physician that every so often you just kind of go in for a checkup. Almost like preventative. I worked in oral surgery for a long time. And so, even though our job was to remove bad teeth and take out wisdom teeth and do jaw surgery, we always encourage, like, you got to go see a dentist regularly because it is much cheaper to catch a problem early than to catch it when you have to come see us. Yeah. And sometimes healthcare workers are not the best at taking our own advice. And so it actually took my one of my coworkers, one of my surgical nurses, to be like, Casey, you don't have to have this stereotypical thing to go get help. Someone very close to me passed away, and I had taken care of everyone else and kind of been supportive for everyone else. So I didn't really process for like 6 to 8 months, and then it all hit at once. And I was like, well, I'm eating, I'm able to go to school, I'm able to work. Like, my life isn't that bad. Like, I'm not special. But finally it was like, just go get fixed now so it doesn't get bad. And after a few visits, got some tools to kind of help process that. And I still use some of those tools when I'm going through just stressful situations. So even though I haven't needed that sort of prevention, I have the skills that I need. And so I think having conversations like this and talking about it kind of will help remove that stigma of I have to be sick, or I only go to the doctor when I have the flu, when in reality we go to the doctor a bunch of different times. And so finding, little ways of learning how to cope or how to process or how to have better habits, or sometimes just having that neutral party to vent to sometimes is all you need. And in kind of prepping for this, one of the first places a lot of people go are clergy. And as a campus minister, definitely will concur with that statistic. And I know for me, I'm very much aware of where my training is, and what my role in that is. And so I very much advocate for students to seek out counselors, whether that's on campus or through their health insurance or back home. That my job is to accompany them, to support them, to be that person who walks with them through this journey. Because I'm not a healthcare provider, I have training. I know how to, recognize things, but, it's not my calling. It's not my vocation. And so I very much encourage students to kind of seek those out, in addition to, finding someone who can walk with you, whether that is a member of clergy, a mentor at school, someone in your family. And I know that helped a lot for me. And I've seen it work in a lot of students as well.
I'd like to kind of back up on
Absolutely.
something that I thought was really interesting, and you made a really good point. If you access a therapist or counselor for, let's just say, I'm going to borrow your issue you brought up, a grief issue, and you do 2 or 3 sessions. What happens for most people is they either learn some new coping tools, or they get to be more proficient with the way they cope, or that the coping strategies that they possess already. So the therapy kind of gets them to be a little bit more of an expert, either with a new tool, or I'm better. I can use what I have a lot better now. Okay? So I don't need any more therapy or counseling. But what has happened, and that's the point I was gonna you'd said, what's happened is now I'm more proficient with the tools I have in my toolbox, and I may have some new ones. So something new comes up, now I can use those tools with something new, and I may not need counseling or therapy with new things because I've learned how to enhance what I have already, or I picked up some new things. So therapy can really have very long lasting effects for the rest of our life. And maybe you might say, well, 1 or 2 sessions, what's that going to do? It's hard to tell, but the likelihood is it may do a lot. And like you said, prevention, but I can continue to use those things as I proceed through life. Anyway, I just thought that you'd said that, and I thought that's really neat.
Yeah. And sometimes just getting it out there and being able to sleep, that was the thing. I was struggling sleeping because of having all of that. And so just being able to sleep I got it out, I was able to sleep, and then I was like, okay, I now have the energy to do that. And I know sleep is a huge thing for college students. As Skylar shakes his head.
Yeah.
I don't think I slept hardly any when I was in college. Anything you want to add, Skylar, before we jump to the next one?
I did like a point that you hit on about like, with friends and like, psychiatric help, right? Like it's a team effort. So, maybe you shouldn't like lean on your friends if or like you don't need to go to your friends with like really deep-seated issues that a therapist or a counselor might be better equipped to handle. But, if you just need to vent to someone, there's like nothing wrong with going to a friend to talk about that stuff. I also really like, I try to do this with my friends and they do this with me. Sometimes, especially nowadays where everyone's got this kind of shared mental health issue that we're all trying to deal with, right? Asking like, hey, are you in a spot right now that you can help me out? Like just listen to me vent or whatever. And that goes a long way because, if I'm not in a space to handle that right now, then, it's helpful to, be able to.
Absolutely. That's a great point. So let's bring it back to faith a little bit. Not that we haven't talked about faith the whole time, but so like what role does faith play in kind of your mental health, or just how you've seen it work in the mental health of others? That worked.
For me, it's a huge role. So coming in from high school, I think was probably like one of the worst like mental health states I've been in, right? And that was correlated almost directly to like how involved I was in my faith. And so when I came to UCA, I very intentionally sought out, like CCM after a while, but also sought out like counseling. And so for me, they go hand in hand, and they, like counseling plays a huge part along with my faith. So it's in many ways fill the same role. Words are hard.
Well, one of my areas of training is in cognitive therapy, and then there's cognitive behavioral therapy. I was trained primarily in cognitive therapy, and I was also trained my early years in behaviorism. So the behaviorism came first, but in cognitive therapy, if you get somebody that's a cognitive therapist, they're going to be looking at 3 things with the individual, and that's going to be values, morals, beliefs, thoughts. And the deeper issues are morals and then values. And those kind of the beliefs kind of come from, that's more of an environmental thing. That's going to shape, what I believe is going to develop my morals and values. Morals and values, whether it's Catholic, Christian, Protestant, Buddhism, Muslim, whatever values and beliefs guide our thinking. So for us as Catholic Christians, our morals and values coincide with our beliefs, or what they are, and that shapes and molds our thinking. So it's very important, and thinking thoughts, the outcome of that are behaviors and emotions. The old saying, which came first, chicken or the egg? Well, the answer is simple: the chicken did. An egg can't lay a chicken. So for me as a Catholic Christian, God made chickens. Okay.
That's a hot take there, Mr. Smith.
What? Adam and Eve had eggs, and if they wanted to eat them, or whatever, fried chicken, I guess, I don't know, but chickens were there before eggs, and with the same thing is thoughts proceed behaviors and feelings. Feelings are a result of our thinking, and thoughts can be very, very rapid, very, very quick. And that's part of cognitive therapy is people are kind of locked in on their feelings. Well, okay, but let's relock on your thoughts. What is that producing? And thoughts produce feelings. So for us, our belief system and our faith, the church, that's the guide, but it shapes our thinking and shapes our behavior. And when I go to confession, my priest tells me to get back in line. It's kind of like, you're not behaving like you should be, like you're thinking. Okay, you're right. So that's the benefit of confession. So, for a mental health thing for us, I think confession is that's a excellent resource that we don't take advantage. I would say most Catholics don't take advantage of as much as they could.
Absolutely. I know that's been one of the biggest helps, just for me in general, not only with my mental health, but in my just general faith life is coming from a Protestant tradition into the Catholic faith when I was in college, being able to audibly hear that I was forgiven. And so when my mental health would start to kind of get out of balance, hearing those words and being able to go back and remember, like, oh no, I'm forgiven for this, really helped during college when you're, doing collegey things. But the major way that faith kind of helps or has a role in my mental health is really through scripture. And again, a nod to my Protestant background. I have yet to kind of have a feeling or a, root thought that isn't somewhere expressed in scripture. Whether that is someone, feeling that feeling and handling it poorly, or feeling that feeling and handling it ideally. So it kind of is a way of getting recognition for some of those feelings and thoughts and things that I have to manage or struggle with, and that we all do during seasons of, stress, whether that is like right now or finals or figuring out what you want to do for the rest of your life. Realizing that that's not actually true. You may have multiple things you do for the rest of your life. But being able to connect to scripture, and then as I became Catholic, connect to saints who, maybe went through something that I went through, or even if it's a little different, they are able to confront or overcome things that I can kind of connect to, even if it's not directly my story. And I think that's why um, I connect so much to kind of encouraging people as well as myself to talk about our mental health, is like being able to see that you're not the only one, and that, you know, there are people in this book that we all kind of revere who had the same struggles that I'm having now, or, you know, going through the same stress or trauma that I did, is super helpful. And then, of course, community is always the root of everything. So, because yes, there are times you need to be by yourself, but there are times that you do not need to be by yourself. And that, again, is just something that faith has really kind of taught me as a way of managing kind of mental health. So,
I sometimes theology and psychology will intersect, and I tell my patients before we step on that first theological tile, they need to know something. I've read enough theology to make me dangerous. So, do we really want to step there? But, speaking of scripture and mental health, there's several individuals outlined in the scriptures that dealt with depression. Saul, King Saul, he committed suicide. David definitely had depression. And I've been in seminars where we talked about David and the depression that he was racked with and struggled with. Job had depression. He was so depressed. His wife even encouraged him to kill himself. Just get it over with, curse God and die, which is a metaphor for just kill yourself, and get this over with. So Job had nobody really in his corner, and he struggled with depression. And last but not least, then Christ himself in the Garden of Gethsemane, it's pretty clear he felt a deep depression and abandonment, And I don't think he despaired. I can't find anything that leads me to believe that, but I definitely feel like or believe that he went through everything that we go through, and then of course the crucifixion itself. I mean, but without getting into all that, but so depression is, to me, I guess there's people that would argue differently, but to me, it seems to be pretty well highlighted. So it's there. It has been there. It's a human. It's something that happens to us. It's a disorder. Um, yeah, that's neighbors again. But it's but so mental health's in the scriptures as well. But um,
yeah.
I want to just mention one thing. A long time ago, I had a lady I was working with, and she was non-Catholic, and they had told her in her congregation that her depression was some type of weakness of her own theological or faith belief or something, some kind of weakness. And of course, professionals look at it. It's a physiological depression's a physiological disorder. It's a physical thing. It's not just, you don't make it up in your head. Anxiety is a physiological disorder. And so anyway, we talked, and she really struggled, and she was told to leave her medications on a table or something, and just give it all. And if you believe enough, everything will be fine. Well, guess what happens when you don't take your medicines if you have depression? She decompensated, got her back on her meds and everything. And so she was struggling with, now what do I do? And so I thought, well, you fight fire with fire. And I said, well, tell your pastor, because he had some type of heart disease or something, I think at the time, to put his medicine first on the table. and let's see how his faith works. Let's see you, because you're the leader. And anyway, she didn't stay long with apparently they got mad at her and told her a few things. How dare you? Who told you that? And she said, my therapist said, call him anytime. I never got a call. But I try to use that as an example because, these are physical issues, and medication sometimes is absolutely needed. And there's nothing to be ashamed. I don't see people being ashamed of taking medication for sugar diabetes or hypertension or coronary heart disease or thyroid or blood disorders. I don't see anybody kind of hiding their face as they're walking in to their pharmacist getting their medications, prescriptions filled. I mean, but again, there's that stigma. But I think when people realize there's nothing to be ashamed of, besides, the old statistic was 1 out of every 5 Americans when I first started in this career would suffer with clinical depression. I think it's probably more than that now, but that's 1 out of 5. So that's a lot. It's 20% of the population. That's a lot of people, and it's probably more. Anyway, I just wanted to kind of mention that there. I'll shut up.
Oh no, you're good. This is awesome. One of my favorite. I had lots. I'm a big nerd, so lots of classes were my favorite classes. But one of the first classes, I originally went to grad school. I signed up for the wrong thing, apparently. I was getting my pastoral care degree, but I really wanted my religious education degree. So we fixed that after one semester. But the first class I ever took was psychology and religion, looking at that intersection. And it's one of my favorite interesting classes. But that's a whole side conversation. I wrote a paper on occult and like object relations and all sorts of weird things. So students know I'm a super nerd, so I could talk about this all day. But I thought we would wrap up because we're about 10 minutes left. We would end with, what advice would you give students who might be struggling with their mental health, or what advice would you give students to kind of set up those preventive measures for this coming year?
You want me to go first?
Whoever wants to go first.
Okay, sure. I would say, when in doubt, access the resources, or to call you, at your school, and I'm sure you have a list of people that they could access. The other thing with students, one of my roles at my hospital, I work for a Catholic hospital, and I developed and manage and run the Employee Assistance Program and EAP. And in our EAP, and most EAPs have this available, students are still under, most of the time, are, I would think for most EAP packages, are still under their parents' EAP if their parents have one. So with our EAP that I write the contracts and developed it and everything, students at any college or trade school, for ours, it's up to the age of 22. They can access their parents' EAP, so they get like 6 free psychotherapy or counseling sessions that insurance doesn't have anything to do with. All they have to do is just give a call. Their parents just verify, and they don't get information. They just the parent turns it on, and the student gets it. So they got free counseling with, we have a cadre in our office of really well-trained therapists. So they get one of us. So that's an avenue that's really not discussed. But Some schools have counseling services.
Mhm.
Sometimes they're really good. Sometimes they're mediocre. Sometimes they're not good. It depends on who's there, and how it operates. But and a lot of times in communities, most colleges are in communities that are large enough for mental health professionals to practice, and the students still most of the time have access or connected to their parents' health insurance. So they could use that if they need be. But I would say um, access those resources. The sooner the better. And um, a lot of people like therapy after they get used to it. But
Mhm.
I would just say access it before. Don't let it get too. I mean, there's never a bad time, but um, there are times that I think the sooner you access it, the better the outcome.
Ditto. Yeah, take stock of, the resources that your campus provides. And um, I think something that's helped me is kind of taking a critical look at last semester,
Mhm.
and the online classes as we finished up there, and where I succeeded and where I didn't, and what I can learn from that to adapt for next semester. Even though we're starting in person, I don't know about other school, like Hendrix or not. Have they said anything?
I think they're the same for now.
Okay, but yeah, I mean, so there's at least a decent chance that we may transition to online at some point. So, something I figured out pretty quickly last semester is that with asynchronous classes, I lose that kind of structure in my day. And yeah, I can make an excuse like, oh, I can do this work at 1 in the morning, but
Mhm.
so setting apart time. Maybe where that class would have been, or just something that gets you up each morning, is really what it comes down to for me. Is really helpful. So taking stock of what works and doesn't,
Yeah.
or figuring that out if you don't.
Um, so I was gonna say all that. So now I gotta come up with something else. So obviously connect to your faith life. Because one of the many, 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 many things that I really appreciate about the Catholic faith is there's so many ways to not only connect to Christ, but also to connect to yourself. And so whether that is through meditation through the rosary, whether that is through the Examen, which is my favorite. Every student's laughing who's watching this right now. To silent retreats, to there's so many ways of doing kind of self-reflection and self-awareness. Totally borrowing this from an article I read on it literally just flew out of my brain. Is it the Catholic I'll put it in the chat later. But this student who's working on her PhD in catechesis was talking about her own struggle with maintaining her mental health during, quarantine and everything. And she kind of pointed out 4 things. And as I was reading it, I was like, that's what I would suggest. That's what I would suggest. She just said it better than me, so I'm going to steal her words. So she pointed out the importance of self-awareness, like finding out what habits and patterns work for you, which we've talked about, and what helps you feel grounded. And so that's different for everybody, which we definitely discussed at length already. Finding support, either through ministry, through counselors and therapists, through resources. Again, we talked about it. We're hitting all those things. Keeping promises to self. And the way she worded this, I was like, ouch. Maintaining a schedule and discipline so that you show up for yourself rather than putting yourself on the back burner because you have time or you don't, everyone else in the world is dealing with stuff. My stuff isn't as important. It's like, no, there's a certain amount of things you have to show up for yourself for. And then the last one she mentioned was self-compassion. So showing yourself grace, being gentle with yourself, because we're all, especially now, with not really knowing 100% what next semester is going to look like, that, we're all kind of figuring this out together. And so being gentle with yourself as you, figure out your own way through. And that, also feeds into all of those other things. So it's almost like a self-replicating cycle. And Mr. Smith was like, yep. And so that article really helped me. So I'll definitely put that in the chat. So you guys who are watching this later can have access to it. She is much better at speaking than I am. And so that would be my advice. And the other thing is sleep. Sleep is super important. I know pot, calling kettle, everything. I would show up literally with 30 minutes of sleep at a 6 a.m. meeting. But sleep is definitely one of the biggest kind of self-care things I think we can do to help our mental health. So I figured I would open the floor for any kind of last thoughts or comments or anything we didn't cover.
I think that's all those are really good points. And something to always remember for me anyway is no one takes better care of you than you. Mm-hmm. Don't expect anyone else to take better care of you. So the best person to take care of me is me, and other people care for me. I get that, but no one's going to take better care of me than me. So it's very important that we take care of ourselves.
Yeah. I forgot whether it was class or the doctor that I worked for in hospital training made the comment of remember the airbag thing on airplanes?
Yeah.
You put the air on yourself because if you pass out, you can't help the person next to you.
That's right.
And so you put your mask on first before you try to help others. And kind of as the fixer, I have that on my mirror in my bathroom. Put your mask on first. So that will be my closing thing. I'm not going to say anything more. Any closing thoughts, Skylar?
I think y'all summed it up.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us on this week's call. So just for anyone who is watching this in the future, we have a rosary on Monday afternoons at 4, led by Alexis Smith. And then we have our next Tuesday Night Live next week, which is a strong possibility. It's going to be Mythbusters. And then, of course, we still have small groups and a CCM social and some cool online retreats coming up soon. So definitely follow us on our social media. If you want some contacts or resources, go to conwaycatholic.com/resources. And I have put up buttons that you can push for the various school counseling programs, as well as a couple of really good online sources, and that'll be updated as things continue, and we get some input from some of our speakers. So definitely check that out. And otherwise, we hope you have a great week. Bye.